computer. Hi, and welcome to Stimming and Stilettos with Dr. Tasha. And as you guys know, I always have the best guests on the best podcast, and today is no different, y'all. So I always try to think of, I always think of my guest as my friend, but this is really my friend. We haven't talked in I think it's been it's at least been a year.
Yes.
It's at least been it's been a minute. It's been a minute. But Andrea Miller we sat on advisory committees together. I can't remember how we met.
That's where we met. We met on that advisory committee.
We did, but then we sat on another advisory committee, and then I was on your advisory committee, and then I don't know what happened. I don't even know what happened. But
life started lifing.
Life started life, and that's what happened. So she is doing all the things in the name of STEM, and she's a teacher at heart, but she's a STEM advocate, right? She's just done a lot of things. And so as you guys know, I mean, she is me, I am her, she is STEM, right? And so when it came time to, be a guest on the show, she was like, girl, me, she. And I was like, right, okay, it's time. So she is here, and I can't be happier to have you on the show. So I'm just so grateful that you say yes. You said yes. And as I do every time, I just, like I said, I always get the smiles, and I'm always happy when my friends say yes to the show. So I'm ever so grateful to have you on. So thank you.
Of course. Of course.
Okay, so as I do with every guest, Andrea, tell us your STEM story.
My STEM story. So I feel like my STEM story really began when I was a student. So when I was a student, I grew up here in the Atlanta area in Decatur, went to Southwest DeKalb. And I was, what someone would consider to be a textbook pretty good student, like graduated valedictorian. I didn't struggle per se in school. I had a lot of really great teachers, but I think a lot of times when you do okay academically, people kind of suggest and send you messages about what you probably need to go to school and do, or what kind of school you need to go to. Yeah. So we know the story, right? Doctor, lawyer, don't you want to be at that, don't you?
Yeah.
And so I went to Duke University, had a blast, went in there thinking that I wanted to be pre-med, left with a double major in economics, public policy, and marketing. But while I was at Duke, I did struggle in the math and science courses. I mean, of course, I think everything happens for a reason, because I think that struggle actually got me on a path that's really more aligned with who I am. Like, I ain't got no business being nobody's doctor. Trust me when I say. Okay. So I think that's how God works. But with that being said, I know what it's like to go to a competitive university and have that feeling of like, oh my goodness, because I had great teachers, but I still felt that struggle. And a lot of times that struggle is part of that leaky pipeline of why people who really do want to be that doctor or that whatever in STEM, why they may not make it through in that particular area. So when I graduated, I spent 1 year in corporate doing corporate account marketing, was bored 2 tears, and knew that I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what. And there's a part of me that's very creative, very artistic, very not by the bookish. And so I started teaching at MLK High School in DeKalb County, was double certified in social studies and math. I had no desire to be a math teacher, but those were the only openings that they had. I really wanted to just teach economics, but they were like, you have to be a social studies teacher to do that. So I ended up getting both certifications, taught for 6 years, was good at it, and learned how to teach and how to break down information to students who were coming to me every single year, ill prepared in math and or econ, depending on what I was teaching. After those 6 years, I spent 1 year working at Teach for America for like coaching 30 teachers in DeKalb, in Fulton, and APS. And while I was doing that, I was getting my master's in urban ed leadership from Columbia. At that point, I thought that I wanted to do school administration, which I think when you're really good as a teacher, they automatically put you in that lane of like, okay, then maybe you might want to lead a school. And it was very interesting to me. But I got an opportunity to see what education looked like at a number of different schools in the metro area. And at that time, I met Peter McKnight, who was a principal at South Atlanta School of Law and Social Justice. And because I had 3 teachers at that school. So in my second year working, at the beginning of my second year working at Teach for America, a position became open for instructional coach. And he reached out to me and said, I would love for you to interview for this position. So I interviewed, got it, and went back into the schoolhouse at South Atlanta High School. And I've been there ever since. That was 2012. But my function has changed over the years. So when I got hired, I was hired as an instructional coach. And so I supported a number of different subject areas. But in the 2016-17 school year, APS wanted for all of their clusters to kind of pick a signature program. And my cluster chose STEM, now STEAM. And I, quite honestly, I think I got that position to be the STEAM instructional coach coordinator for the school because I think I was just the only person that really was interested in it because I saw the value of it. Yeah. And that's how it goes in schools. The minute you raise your hand and you show that you're in, oh, so it's you. Great. So I was the first person at my school to hold that position. And I've been holding that position ever since. And so in 2020, during the pandemic, everybody started something during the pandemic. So did I. And so what I started was a consulting firm because much of my work at the high school level is I sit in between various entities in the K-12 STEM ecosystem. I sit in between people who are funding things. I work at a school. So you have district and state concerns. Right. You have people that want to work with the school. You have all this stuff going on. And a lot of times I sit in between and I am brokering that relationship so that it can work effectively for students. So right. that we get the outcome that, that we need. And so that's what my consulting firm focuses on. It focuses on increasing the capacity of organizations in that K-12 STEM ecosystem that's committed to increasing the representation of historically underrepresented populations. And so that is what I'm doing now. I still work at South Atlanta, but I also do my consulting.
I mean,
that's a lot.
Right. But I will say this, it unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I mean, what you're doing is so needed. Because I feel like we still are at a time when schools need our help because for whatever reason, they can't seem to get out of their own way to help the very students that are walk into their buildings every single day. They just can't seem to navigate their own systems, right? Corporations can't seem to get into buildings that they say they want to be in to help the students. The schools can't seem to reach out to the corporations or the community partners that they say they actually need, especially. And then if we're talking about this huge thing, especially in Georgia, if we're talking about STEM and STEAM certification, whether we're talking about at the state level or Cognia, at that, one of the ways in which schools are failing at STEM and STEAM certification is community partnerships. That's one of the things that they fail at all the time. As someone who sits on those, those teams. Mm-hmm. The teams that walk into the buildings, they fail. The community partnerships is the area. How do you bridge the gap? Like they want, it's sort of like, this is that area. You need somebody who can be like, hey, we got this partner, we got a school. How do we get them partnered together? We need a you who can negotiate that relationship, who can bridge the gap to get these two, who can really talk to what the needs are, what you can bring to the table and what you can bring to the table, and have them both sit down and actually have a for real conversation and get through all of the
junk.
That's a nice word for it. Mm-hmm.
There's other words.
Yeah, to make it happen, because that is the thing. And at the end of the day, the students win, and you know, it's so frustrating. It's just so it's just so frustrating.
I mean, I would say in the last month, I've at least spoken to 4 different people who have wonderful organizations, and every single one of them, one of their biggest issues is they're having trouble getting into schools and school systems. And that's one thing, you know, working at South Atlanta that I really tried to do is like, well, I ain't gonna make this hard now. Like, we're not gonna make this hard. Not gonna make this hard. If you call me and you have a program and you have something you want to do, pull up. I'll meet you outside. Like, we're not gonna make this difficult, you know, but it can be difficult. And to what I mean, you hit the nail on the head for everything. I spend a good amount of my time trying to pull those sides together, because on the school end of things, and you stated it perfectly, schooling in the country gets in its own way.
Yeah.
It's so archaic. They spend their time measuring either the wrong things or measuring the right things the wrong way.
Yes.
Either way, it's poor data that they're gathering to affirm whether or not they're actually achieving anything. And it just establishes a lot of red tape and systems and structures that make it very difficult for people to help you, that want to help you. One thing I don't struggle with is my inbox stays full with people that want to, there are things going, especially in a city like Atlanta, stuff is going on to the point it feels like a Cheesecake Factory menu. I don't have a problem. Every kind of coding camp you can think of. Girls coding, we code on Fridays, these kind of girls coding, girls with short hair coding, guys coding, everybody's like, we have all the, I'm not short for finding programs, but the numbers haven't moved.
Right.
The numbers are still the same. So everybody's like on a hamster wheel. We're doing more, but the outcome is not moving. So we're not working synergistically with each other, you know, really well. On the school end of things, schools really don't know how to be partners. They don't understand that, and they don't. And these are the times when my background in corporate and in nonprofit, they're just ways of operation that are baffling, that schools and districts operate. And I think it's just a lack of knowledge. Like, if you've never worked in another space, you don't realize that the rest of the planet does not operate this way. Right. So they get money, they get resources, they get things. And I have to tell people all the time in different spaces, this is not a love offering. Like, somebody gives you $25,000 to help increase, you know, Black students in STEM. We need to see an increase in Black students in STEM. We have to put structures in place so that we can do that. And so that we can gather data, so that when that organization wants to reapply for that funding, because, hey, it didn't fall from the sky like manna. We are not the children of Israel. They have to go somewhere and get that money. And a lot of times where they go and get that money, sometimes those people are saying, hey, what's data? Right. So there are plenty of people who are losing funding and losing their ability to help you, school, because we're not functioning the way we need to function so we can help you. And so a lot of times schools need help with that. They need help with thinking creatively. Like, how do you work in a system that they've created this box for you, but how do you get creative about how to get an outcome? But then on the flip side, a lot of companies and organizations don't realize how off kilter the way schools and districts work. They legitimately don't understand how schools are structured. They have a wonderful program, but they literally don't realize all the dominoes and moving pieces that have to be in place. So like now I'm working with a partner that wants to come into our school. Awesome partner. What he wants to do is awesome. But I had to explain how master scheduling works.
Yeah.
Because that impacts funding for the school. So in order for this to happen, we have to kind of do this, then we have to get this, like we're doing it, we're working it out. But he didn't realize it was more like 60 steps get it to work. And so when you see things not happen, or when you hear people say, well, it can't be done, and that irritates me. A lot of times it's not that it can't be done. You either don't know how to do it or you're not willing to take the time to do it.
Yeah. Well, I love that we're having this conversation, because on the other side, it's like having to, as someone who's worked at a school, but is also working with a company, a tech ed company, and having to explain to people like schools don't work that way, like having to explain it to them, as a teacher, like I need you guys to understand that the way you're, like, I love the way you're thinking, but schools don't think that way. In an educational environment, like, you're thinking in 2023, schools are still back in 2010, right? Or 2001, right? They're not as progressive as you. Like, when you're talking about master schedules, like me having to explain I was actually having to explain to someone the school buying cycle. Because they're like, well, no, they were trying to put together, they were like, well, this is how we're thinking. And I was just like, well, if you're going based off of when you think a school is going to purchase things, I'm trying to tell you that from about April to about August, they're not buying anything because they don't have a budget. And they were like, what do you mean? And I'm like, they don't buy anything because there's no budget. Like, what do you? And so they were like, I said, trust me when I tell you, the budget is from, like, they're not purchasing anything from about April, end of beginning of May till August, when school gets back in. Like, the budgets probably gets cuts back on in August. Like, what? They're not purchasing anything. No. And it was a foreign,
their funds for the next year, like in January, February. It's when
right.
you start thinking about okay, funding
right. I said the best time to get them to purchase anything is about from January to April, because then they start like, oh, we still got money. We're not giving anything back. We're gonna use these.
Gotta run it down.
Right. So I said, so you wanna get in with the school? You start talking to them in January. They're like, oh yeah, we still got these funds. We got $50,000. What we gonna spend this $50,000? Yes, so ma'am. They thought I was joking.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, again, a lack of knowing, a lack of understanding. And then it's like, then when you do understand, how do you need to structure your offer? And how do you speak the language so that you're solving the pain point of a school or a district leader? And like I tell people all the time, I'm not saying the pain point makes sense. I'm saying that this is a list on their, this is a box they have to check.
They have to check.
Okay.
You understand how this system works.
I see forest through the trees.
Okay.
And help them check this box.
Right.
Then listen in for other things that's coming along with it, and you get your foot in the door. But if you don't know the language to speak, you'll spin your wheels for forever. But I told someone the other day, they were like, a lot of schools are saying they don't have money. I said, they got money. No.
Right, but you got to know when the window. You got to
have the money. But they also are not, a lot of school, and I can say this because I don't have a doctorate in education. I have a specialist. And so, but I've seen the curriculums for a doctorate in education, and I've seen enough to know and be able to safely say, and having done the corporate thing, people who are leading schools and districts don't have enough adequate training in how to run big $1 million budgets.
Oh, I agree.
They do not.
100%.
And I really wish that more schools that offer doctorates of education get together with a B school and get together with a Six Sigma program and really help leaders at that level understand efficiency and lean management and ROI and how they can creatively utilize the money and the funds that they have for an outcome. And if it wasn't for my background, again, I probably wouldn't see some of these things, but I do.
Yeah.
And so again, some things are just lack of knowledge. And because there's a lack of knowledge, things just aren't happening as effectively as it could.
Well, I also think, I think you're right, because most school leaders were former teachers, right? So we didn't go to business school.
Didn't go to B school, you didn't go to all of that. But for those of us that are like career switchers, that's what sometimes happens, is that you get into a school system, you're like, nah,
right. So
like, you don't understand why things are happening. I'll give you a very good example. Pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I remember two things I remember clearly. A number of schools were like, we need to be one-to-one, we need to be one-to-one. And there were every single reason in the book as to why we couldn't be one-to-one. I'll never forget that Wednesday when we started to hear that, things were happening and da-da-da-da-da. And by Friday, every kid had a laptop. It shouldn't take a pandemic to push us in a corner to force us to see that there's a need. And I know that we weren't the only district, you know what I mean? That happened across the board in a number of different places. Education as a whole had to be forced into adopting technology. So now we're home, right? And people are like, oh my God, how am I going to teach my class? Da, 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 da. Because I had come from corporate, come from nonprofit, because I had different things that I was doing with folks outside of the school system, I had Zoom accounts. Right. I had all of this stuff, but it was so new for people in the building because they don't function with it. They up to that point.
Right.
And so it was this very quick, sharp, steep learning curve.
Yeah.
Because education didn't realize people have had this for
years, forever. Yes.
Years. But they're just so far behind, And
it felt
like a pandemic.
You know what? And I think you're right. And I think that's actually a really good example of how it felt. So of course my kids were I had a daughter who was a freshman in college, and I had a son who was a 10th grader at the time. And I just was kind of, I don't know why, but I was shocked at the number of teachers who were just like, I don't know how to do this. Because for me, I was just like, my kids were already on Zoom. They already knew how to do. I think they were using one of my daughter's school was using Teams, and somebody else was using Zoom. And so it was just sort of like, Mom, why am I telling my teacher how to do this? Right. Like they were all like this. They were so frustrated because it was not new to them, but it was so new to their professors and their teachers. And it was so frustrating because it was just like, I don't want to spend time telling my teacher, like, you're on mute, right? You attach here, you go and do, and it was just sort of like, and it had them thinking of their teachers in this, not the most flattering of ways. And it was like, why don't they know this? Like, honestly, why don't they, like, what they're not using this other places. And it had them thinking of their teachers in like the most antiquated of ways. And I was like, yeah, I mean, we had been using it at our church. We had been using it in other ways. They had seen me using it it was just sort of like, why aren't teachers using this, right? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. It had never dawned on me that teachers weren't using this in the classroom.
And so now you fast forward, there's So I was talking to a partner, an esports company, and I've heard this from a number of different organizations, and I'm asking them, what are gaps that you see? So child leaves high school, they're interning for you or whatever. What are gaps that you're seeing? Because I want to hear the gaps, because based on what you say, I'm trying to go back to my teachers to be like, boom, boom, boom. And the person said, they just don't have a knowledge of things that we use to function and collaborate. Like we have to teach them how to use like a project management tool. We have to teach them how to use all these things. And I had to explain to them, they wouldn't know. And I'll tell you why. Their teachers don't know. And I'll tell you why. They don't use it in schools. So I asked a few teachers, now I know what it is. I've worked outside of a school, right? And so I was like, have you ever heard of like a project manager or project management tools? And they hadn't. And I knew that that was going to be the answer. But what I was explaining to them is that like, if a teacher doesn't know how to use something, it's not going to happen with the student.
Yeah.
So that's where it's up to leadership to understand and keep up with what is being used in industry, what is being used outside of our space, because we need to be using it so that we're using it with our students so that when they leave here, they're more equipped. So I had a conversation with like my English teachers at the time, and I was like, okay, let's talk about a project management tool and what it looks like in a classroom to spur collaboration. At the very least, even if you expose a child to one of them, pick one.
Yeah.
Trello, it could be Asana. At least they know what it is.
And most of them are, Trello is the easiest. I'd pick Trello, but I think that that's actually accurate, and it just sort of keeps them up to date with what's going on. And I think there's some value in it for teachers anyway, right? Especially at the rate teachers.
And that's what professional development can include. A lot of times PD is focused on why Johnny won't sit down. They didn't give enough PD to teachers about other things.
But let me ask you this question though. Do you think that since post-COVID, even though it's still around, do you see teachers regressing?
Yes and no. So I think teachers have, again, had to learn more technology. But I actually have heard students say, and I would have to agree, that in some ways, teaching has gotten a little lazy. And so when you think technology, there's technology that helps you to just teach better, right? So like cute technology to give quizzes, or technology so that you can survey, or, things like that. And then there's technology that's part of the field.
Yeah.
But I think also what ended up happening, and I see this in a number of different schools, we have to now get better at intentional use of technology. Like, just because you have a, technology at your fingertips, is this the best way to get the type of engagement that this topic needs, And so sometimes you see an overusage
of technology
to where it's like everything is on Google Drive and everything is on, and it's like there's some things that you just need to work with your hands on. Everything can't be digitized because it makes it, easier in that way. So yes and no. I think teachers are definitely more adept with technological tools. Districts have invested in tech, support, tech specialists, people that are actively teaching. So I think that has improved. And now it's about intentional use. Because when those kids all came back to school, face to face, they ready for some engagement. They don't want to, and it was a struggle. Because there were some kids that were like, well, if I'm gonna come back to school just to sit on the computer again, then I could have been at the house.
Right.
Point made. So it took a little bit of while for teachers to be like, now we back.
Right.
So
it's like, I'm gonna be looking at you, look at me. We're gonna do some things.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, okay, another question for you then. If we're going to talk about re-engaging with students as it relates to STEM or STEAM, and we can talk about that whole thing. But what are you seeing being done in classrooms? We can talk about TSA, we can talk about Vexor or Lego robotics and those things, but I kind of sort of want to, I don't know what's happening in classrooms so much anymore since my two are out. So I don't know exactly what's happening. How are we engaging students? I know, like I know there are kits being used in classrooms, but I mean, what's the curriculum like, I guess, is the better question. Is it more engaging, hands-on? What's happening? I think that's the better question.
Yeah. So the big push, I would say, across the board in a number of different areas is hands-on engagement and PBL, problem project-based learning, right? It's like the buzzword. It's a good way of teaching where the problem that students are trying to solve are community-based problems or problems that they encounter every day, and they're using STEM to solve it, right? And they're using engineering, design, process, and method to go through that. So everyone is pushing for it, but what's beginning to happen is that the pandemic exposed this, and it's just further being exposed that it's like the Three Little Pigs. If you build a house out of sticks and straw, and then you have a storm coming, everything ain't gonna stand.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening is everybody's trying to do PBLs. Everyone's trying to push for this big thing, but that big thing can't stand on a foundation of sand. And the foundation is math instruction, science instruction, literacy, like the things that just make up good instruction. So what's happening is people are trying to do big things and the right things with students, but it's now those foundational things that are like, it's a snag, and it's making it difficult or making it a heavier lift.
Is it because it's being taught in a vacuum and it's not relational to PBL in a way? Is that what's happening?
Combination of things.
Okay.
Some of it is that it's being taught in a vacuum. Some of it is that students are getting to higher grades, just not having the foundation that they need. Some of it is teacher efficacy. Standards have changed and have moved around. So, for example, 15 years ago, a standard that may have been a high school standard is now a middle school standard or an elementary school standard. And if that's happening, you have teachers that are teaching things that they didn't initially get certified in. They're not strong in that. So it's a combination of a number of different things. So when I think about professional development, I'm thinking about the full circle of it, right? Making sure that we're tight in our subject area, but then also understanding like how to build a PBL, how do you implement one, et cetera. So that's kind of the big thing now, is though that PBL, project-based learning, experience, and of course trying to make sure that we have computer science or some kind of computer science outlet at the schools. But what I'm noticing is that if that foundation is not strong, and if you can't run to PBL and not be focusing on the foundational things, because it's just going to crumble.
Yeah.
It's just apart.
It's going to implode.
I was talking to Christina Smith, right, founder of Height.
Yeah.
And she actually was my first client, and I love the story because I met her because she worked at another organization and came to my school wanting to partner. So we partnered, and she was like, "I want to have my own organization." I was like, "And I want to do consulting." Forward years later, she has her organization. She's left the organization she was with, so she started her organization. She's a team of one, and she hires me, and she becomes my first client. And now she's team of not one. So I'm happy to say I love, talking about my work with her, but I'll never forget there was a story that she was telling me, and I think she's still experiencing this, where you're trying to teach students computer science elements and their literacy is getting in the way.
Oof.
So you literally are trying to, you're talking about debugging a code or whatever the case may be, but because your literacy is so poor, you're unable to catch or understand or even realize that a simple word is misspelled. So your code isn't working, but it's not because you don't know like the computer science part of it. It's because the literacy part is not there. And so that's a good example of things that we're seeing where I explain it, where it's like something feels heavier than it really should. And it's because you don't have something. It's like trying to pick up a 5-pound weight with 2 fingers. It's not that 5 pounds is heavy. It's that you're missing the other 3 fingers. And if you had it, you'd be able to pick it up. Yeah, you'd be able to pick it up. And then on the flip side of that, there are things that are bona fide hard. They're difficult.
Well, I mean, yeah, but
right. But you still have to have a core foundation,
right,
in order to not get blown away.
I mean, but you make a good point, and I mean, and there's no getting around it. I mean, you there's some things that you have to know, like you fundamentally have to. There's some basics you have to know your ABCs before you have to. You're not going to know that cat is cat if you don't know the C, the A, and the T. That's fundamentals. So there's no getting around that.
Or just even the ability to articulate clearly your idea.
Yeah.
If you have an idea that you want to pitch, how to articulate it clearly. Can you speak well or can you write well? It has to be, otherwise all this great stuff is in here.
or problem solving is fundamentally about being able to speak and talk through. And it's like as a math person or as an engineer, that is our whole language, is problem solving, is being able to say, this is the problem, here is how I'm going to solve said problem, and then you solve the problem. Step 1 is this, step 2 is that, step 3 is this.
And if I know, like I told a student the other day, if I know I'm not the best speaker and I'm not the best writer, I have to go find someone to help me. So I have to be resourceful, but it still is going to require for me to at least communicate
in some way.
In some way.
Right.
And we have a generation of students that are not the best communicators because they have so much technology that allows for them to not have to like engage. So it's a big learning curve in a lot of different areas. But that's what I would say is like the big thing in classrooms. It's like those project-based learning, engaging type of experiences. Everyone wants to get there, but everyone wants to get there tomorrow. And
true. But that's one of the things about PBL though, and the various ways in which it's being taught that I'm seeing anyway, or that I have seen, is that it sometimes there are so many, I feel like it's being shortcut. There's like, if I can get it out, is I think people want to sort of shortcut it. Like, here's the problem, they want to, and then they want to help you get to the problem solving portion of the program without helping you through all of the, they sort of want to they want to shortcut it for you. And it's like, but that's the beauty of it. Like, sort of helping, like you taking that journey is the beauty.
That's the struggle.
Right. And it's like, I was doing a training in California last week. And I was telling the teachers that I was just like, part of the journey. And that's like, and us as teachers, that we have to let the students go on, is that struggle. Like we have to, it's hard. as teachers, because we want to help them, because that's our job, is we have to watch them, and we have to let them fail. And I said, but we have to think of fail as first attempt in learning. So when we think of it as a first attempt in learning, then it changes in our mind, it changes those synapses, as that is when we think about it as them learning, then we can look at it. Okay, they've learned. What have they learned from this endeavor? And then we can look at this and say, okay, so we can take what from this point, where do we go? And those are the questions that we need to ask them to help them push through that hard moment, because we all know how we felt, or how, in this moment, because I had them go through this kit, in this very moment when the light didn't go off, the code didn't work, right? How do what did you do next? You ask questions, you push through, you did the next thing, whatever. Those moments, when the students have those moments, this is the same thing. Whatever you did, this is the same thing you're going to want them to do.
Right.
And so people are all like, oh.
That's your job, right? It's providing a safe place to fall.
Correct. But instead of us jumping in and like moving the light or like typing in the right code, no, let's not do that.
Let them figure it out.
Right. We gotta get away from like everybody gets a trophy, because everybody ain't getting a trophy.
No,
they're not.
No.
They're gonna fail. It's gonna happen. The light's not gonna light up. The code is not gonna work.
Don't whisper in Johnny's ear what to do.
Don't do it. It's just, this is not the way this is not how problem solving works. They're going to have to figure it out.
And look, when you feel like your back is against the wall, that's when the most creative things have to happen. That's when it happens.
And it was so funny, because when I tell you, those teachers were frustrated.
Yeah.
Ooh, buddy.
And the kids are probably, because this generation, they love to reclaim their joy. But you gotta help them. Like, no, we good. If you keep on struggling with it, it's all right. And I do also think too that, so there's an activity that I typically do with our incoming ninth graders, and whenever we call it like our STEM talent identification process, and it never fails. There's always one activity where, again, it's designed for you to not get it immediately. And typically the students who get it first or do it successfully are ones that are not hung up on having to be right. And I think sometimes in school, we send this message that, oh, you got this question wrong, or this is wrong, and that is wrong. And then what happens is the kids are very hesitant, because they're like, I don't want to be wrong.
I don't want to be wrong.
A lot of times it's the high achieving kids, like with
gifted.
One in particular. Yeah. They took 15 minutes starting, because they spent 15 minutes asking me, okay, can I do this? Is this right? Just do it. Okay, if I do this, is that right? Just try it. If I do, they just kept asking. Meanwhile, the other group, who the teachers called the turn up crew was like, all right, here, what we gonna do? Oh, we messed up? Yeah, go back. All right, what we gonna do? You can tell that they don't ask nobody permission for nothing. But because of that, they had kind of a resilience of falling down, getting back up, falling down, getting back up, and they got it.
Right.
And they were creative at getting it. And so school really kind of inadvertently sends some messages to students when there's this like overindulgence in testing, and we got to hit this mark, and we got to get that percentage, and you build students that are like afraid to try.
Right.
I have to literally tell kids whether they're trying something or they're about to graduate. And I'm like, listen, you either gonna find out that you chose the right school or you chose the wrong.
Right. And that's
when we do,
and it's okay.
fine, my number still works. We'll figure it out. But
right. And that I literally had this conversation I actually had it with my daughter and a couple of her girlfriends, and I'm like, y'all cannot be afraid to try. You cannot be afraid to fail. You cannot be afraid to just live life and do things. Like, you only get to do this one time, and you cannot be afraid to step out. Like, good God, you just have one life. Do things. You're gonna fail at it at some of them, not all of them. Like, I'm like, I don't want you to be afraid to risk.
yeah.
Like, no to that.
You're literally trying to you're protecting yourself from a fall. And so because you're protecting yourself from a fall, you just don't even take a step.
Like, geez, who wants to live like that? Where's the fun in that?
But it does take intention in classrooms.
Yeah.
To create spaces for that. It's like, okay, kids have to be agile.
Yeah.
How do you create and craft an experience where you on purpose force them to be agile?
Oof.
You know, and so there was another activity that we did with the kids, and they had, you know, the typical build a roller coaster, but every minute we changed something and you see it coming. And it was just so great to see their reaction, because we'd be like, okay, they're building their little, they're like, okay, we got this. And then I'd be like, all right, for the next minute, or you can keep working, but now you can't talk. And they'd be like, you mean can't talk? Can't talk. And there'd always be some kid that'd be like, okay, so whispering is talking. And they just sit and look. But then you would see somebody, the light bulb would come out and somebody start texting. Or someone will find some paper, somebody start writing. I'm like, okay, y'all gonna figure this out. So then the next couple minutes, it'd be like, okay, y'all can talk now. And they're like, okay, great. Y'all can't use the scissors. And we take the scissors and they're like, figure it out. People tearing stuff with teeth. People are sliding straws inside of, but they figured it out. You know, but the message I would say to teachers is we have to be intentional with classroom experiences. They're not going to just learn collaboration. They're not going to just learn creativity. They're not going to just learn failure. We have to, like, literally on purpose craft a hole for them to fall into, but we know there's we don't let you like tap out, but we got to let you fall though.
Right, we do.
Fall. Now, we're not going to tell you you'll never be nothing in life, but you're going to hit the pavement.
Right.
You know, you're going to hit this pavement and we're going to be there to, come on, try it again. But you have to do it on purpose, because if you don't, schooling will give you every single thing, every safety net, right, that they call it, so that the kids just won't experience, you know, trying, growing.
Right. It's designed to, it's not designed to give you, it's not set up to do that. Okay, so the next phase of this is going to be, so I know that you have some stuff happening.
I do.
So please tell us what's going on. What's going on? What's going on?
The thing that's coming up right now is, and you mentioned this, so we're starting the school year. And so for a lot of K-12 STEM program providers, they're getting back into schools. You know, they're thinking about how they're re-engaging with students. And so I am doing a strategic planning workshop, and I'm doing one every single week in August. So the first one was last week, Tuesday. The next one is tomorrow. You can still sign up. And then there'll be one next Tuesday and then the following Thursday. And it is a true workshop. It is a pet peeve of mine to do workshops and you leave with nothing. Mm-hmm. Oh, no. You're going to leave with some very clear things to help you strategically plan for this year and strategically work with your schools and work with your students. So essentially, we're going to take a look at vision and mission and how that impacts how you structure your offer. and then do a SWOT analysis. And I will be giving you one strength, one weakness, one opportunity that people tend to overlook, and a threat that you need to watch out for. So you're going to leave with what you need to leave with.
Okay.
I mean, listen, it's a lot of stuff I'm not good at, but when I know I'm good at something, you're going to leave with what you need. So the first one was really great. And so that's happening in the month of August. But I am happy to say, and this is the first place that I'm really announcing it publicly, to your point, I know, you should.
Okay, love it.
You should feel special. But plans are in the works for at the top of the year, probably in February, more than likely, I will be doing a conference. I will be doing a conference for K-12 STEM program providers, because to your point, that is the time of the school year that you need to be walking yourself into schools. If you're walking into schools in April, that's not it. They've already planned for the next year. They got too much going on.
Right.
You need to walk into schools at the top of the year. And so the purpose of the conference is to make sure that people who have wonderful things for schools, for districts, for organizations, you want to work with kids, whether it's an after school, during school, summer school, whatever it is, whatever that initiative is, it's going to be a 2-day conference where we are going to make sure that you are equipped with what you need, to make sure that all the emails you send sometimes to people, we're going to try and get some of those people in front of you so they can answer your questions and they can tell you one-on-one what they need. So look out for that.
Love, love, love. So y'all heard it here first.
Heard it here first.
I love a good reveal. Okay, so love that. And so y'all be on the lookout.
Look out for that. And of course, if there's something that you want to discuss with me further, my social handle is at Andrea P. Mills on all social media platforms, and I'm very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me, Andrea P. Miller, and my company is 1212 Consulting. 1212 is my birthday.
And there it is. And there it is. Okay, Andrea Miller. Always good to talk to you. This is a nice, juicy conversation. So this is the question that we always end every single episode of Stemming and Stilettos with. And so this one shall be no different. If you could travel back through time and talk to your younger self, what advice would you give her and why?
Ooh, okay. I definitely think I would catch myself somewhere in high school, but I think the advice that I would give myself is 2 things. One, what we just talked about, just try. I had to come to learn that. And I think when you are an achiever, and when, for me, when your parents are from Jamaica and it's like, you have an opportunity and you kind of are like, and it doesn't mean that I got the message from them, but you just kind of put that pressure on yourself that like, this has to work out, because I know what it looks like for other people, members of my family or people that I know, when it doesn't work out, whether they're in my neighborhood or what have you. But it shouldn't mean that you don't try different things. And I think the second thing I would say is like, learn to hear your own voice. I think a lot of times, you get a lot of voices with their opinions about what you should do, where you should go, what you'd be great at. And they don't mean any harm. But somewhere in there, you get to a point in life where you're like, do I like this?
Right.
Exactly. When did I discover a love for medicine? And when I can't think about it, it's like, I don't think I like medicine. I don't think I want to do this. And that is okay. It is okay to change your mind because you've heard your own voice and to do something different. So that's what I think I would tell myself to do, is just, block out the noise and really listen to your own voice, learn what your own voice sounds like.
Oof, that's so beautiful. And it's actually kind to yourself when you do that. Mm-hmm. It's one of the kindest things that you can do for yourself, actually. So, so do. All right, you guys. I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. And I enjoyed you so much.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed you.
As we do anyway. So as we do every single episode, I enjoy my guests, but I also enjoy my audience. So you guys, as I do every single episode, you guys keep yourselves, until we can meet again, keep yourselves safe.